Welcome to today's CPD series called I Thought I Knew What Developers Want from Architects. Our guest is Gerrit van der Berg. He's been with Atterbury for the past 15 years. For the past 25 years, Atterbury has established themselves as a trusted investment and property company. They build long-term relationships. Their slogan is, "It's a matter of association." Gerrit is the Western Cape Development Manager. He moved to Cape Town, to Stellenbosch 5 years ago and established the Western Cape office. In Gauteng, the bigger projects that he has completed that you might know of is the Bella Bella Mall, the retail component of the club, and the retail component of Linwood Bridge. I want to introduce him more at the hand of three bigger projects in the Western Cape. The first one is the Richmond Precinct. This is a mixed-use commercial precinct that is a benchmark land restitution project where it's a private-public partnership where the people who were forcibly removed in the 1970s are benefiting from this project. Some of the benefits include a skills development project that was completed before construction started. The contractors are using local labor as far as possible. And there are 30 students who study at tertiary institutions because of this project. The second project is La Gratitude. It is in Dorp Street in Stellenbosch. That is a national monument. There, the developers decided to take on the challenge of converting it into a functional building while honoring the architecture, while honoring the heritage of that structure. And it is immaculate. If you drive past there, you wouldn't even know that it is a fully operational office building now. The other one is the Mediclinic, just outside Stellenbosch, which is, I don't have to explain to you now what social responsibility a developer is taking on to build a first-class medical institution like that. When we get taught about architecture, we are often burdened with the social responsibilities of creating spaces that has sufficient social responsibility. But we can't disregard the developer's role in this. We have to honor that they start these projects. We just have to take their hands to develop successful spaces that owns up to its social responsibility. Gerrit, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate your input. Please take us through what it is you're working on in the Western Cape. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anneke. Yeah, I think in the Western Cape, we're slightly more focused currently on the industrial side of it. And so we've got two big industrial parks, one being Richmond, which we'll get to, which is 80 hectares, about 300,000 square meters of bulk. And then next to the Cape Town Airport, we acquired land from the old King David golf course called King. We rebranded to King Air Industria, which is also 72 hectares of land. We've secured the rights middle of last year, and we're busy with the bulk installation of bulk services, and we're hoping to have that done by August. That will also be about 280,000 square meters of light industrial warehouses, logistics. So very excited about that. Great location.
Just as part of the introduction, Gerrit is also my brother. So we are including you into a conversation we've been having for the past, I'm going to say 10 years, because that's how long I've been an architect, even though he's been involved in these types of things for a bit longer. So, Gerrit, I'm going to start off by asking...
Discussions and arguments, you mean?
Discussions, arguments, fights. Well, obviously we are on two different sides of the spectrum, and that's why I think it's a good opportunity for us to open this conversation between the architect and the developer. Gerrit, let's start with, how do you choose your architects, the architect you work with, both your previously used architects and new architects?
I think it's a combination of finding exactly the right architect per project. There's definitely horses for courses. Choosing the right architect to us is of utmost importance. We would normally sit around the table between the development team, myself, our team, guys from our head office in some instances on bigger projects, to make sure you've got the right architect. There's guys that really specialize in retail, and it's quite important for us to have a specialist for a specific project. It's not, well, it sounds a bit arrogant to say we don't want to teach somebody how to do it, but I have built a shopping center before with an architect it was actually my first retail project and his first retail project. And that's a nightmare to do it like that. But even now, you don't have the luxury of time to teach somebody how to do a retail project. And more so on industrial even nowadays. Industrial is very, very specific and very specialized. Commercial, the same thing, where people now focus on consolidating these big offices. We did PwC and Deloitte head offices in Waterfall. And it's a science. You need a guy that specializes in these things and understand how these things work. So we really do look at the track record. We do take into consideration, do the people have the capacity to do it? It doesn't help. You've got a one-man show and he gets run over by a truck, and all of a sudden you're in big trouble. So I think it's a combination, and then finding the right guy for the right project. We've pitched now to do the King Price head office in Pretoria, and their brief was so out of this world. It's unbelievable. If you even just go to their current offices, you'll think they're crazy what they do inside there. But that's why they've got a successful business. So we have to find an architect that can think completely out of the box, completely. So then we have to find guys like Guy Steenekamp to capture what's in the mind of these people. And it's a long discussion, but I think it's a combination of those things. Who's got enough flair? Who's got the capacity, the capability? Doesn't help you find the right company, but the right people in that company doesn't have the capacity at that stage to deliver it. If you find the right guy at a big Bogertman that you need to work on your thing, but he's currently busy building the head office of Sasol, you won't find his expertise and aandag. You're going to struggle.
Let's touch on that. So even if you work with a big company, you are looking for someone specific in that company that you are used to working with.
Probably one lesson that we've learned, and that doesn't just apply for architects, it applies for everybody. When we do our appointment letters, that appointment letter is always addressed to a company, but it always has a key person there. And we've learned a few hard lessons in that. We put the wrong name towards that. Now, I've got quite a few examples where I've been dealing with people, and not necessarily architects. I've got an example of a fire engineer at QS where I've been dealing with that person. He might not have been the boss, but he's my key man. Then all of a sudden he leaves and my project is in trouble. I finished a project here in Cape Town a few years ago where I ended up having 5 different electrical engineers. It ends up being a nightmare because my key man, he left the company just as we went on site, started his own company. He appointed the second guy that they then used, and eventually it ended up in a nightmare. But the key person is extremely important to us. Who's giving you that finer detail? I've worked with these big engineering firms where you end up giving them different scopes. They do the structural, the civil, the fire, the wet services, all those things. At the end of the project, I remember when we did I won't mention the name of the project now, but on completion of that project, was a 21-month project. I saw the guy that I negotiated the fees and did the deal. I saw him at the roof wet for the first time again. I said to him, I remember, except for the one time I saw you in Sportman's warehouse during the project, I haven't seen you. It's not like we didn't have any troubles in between. He's just too busy now. He sits on boards and sits on all these strategic committees. He doesn't have time to be an engineer anymore. And that's a real frustration. So to write a combination, that is tough. I'll give example, if I can give an example, I don't know if I may, but we deal a lot with Bogertman and partners. There we've got specific people. If it's a retail project, Anton Kukumur is the main guy for us. He sits in Pretoria, but they got it right to make sure that he still oversees whoever I'm talking to. And somehow between the Durban, Cape Town, Joburg, Pretoria, Stellenbosch offices, they do get the communication right. No matter who I talk to, I know Anton is overlooking this whole thing. And that's important. And nowadays, the guy running the offices here, Ruan, I speak to him daily. I've just been on the phone with him now. I know that he's grown into being exceptionally good. So he is to me now a key man. He will now become my key man going forward.
So moving on then to the next question is, you can't really be dealing with one-man shows. You always have bigger offices doing your projects.
Most likely, yes. And I don't say it needs to be the biggest, like the painters of old or the Wilgertmans or DHKs, but at least we must know that the show can go on when something happens with someone. I mean, you know Dirk Blom well. We've known them for many years. When I arrived in Cape Town, he was a QS. Didn't know him well. He phoned me. He said he just started his own firm. I just started off here. I had to deal with him. He phoned me. We had coffee, and I said to him, I can use you and give you a gap, but you need a back office. You need somebody that can work with you. I mean, 4 people, 6 people, 8 people, I don't mind. So we were fortunate at the time to give him a bit of risk work. The project did come off, and I think today he's got an office in Stellenbosch of probably about 10 people, and he became successful. But it was always, every discussion we had said that you need people to help. What happens if you get run over? Then we're in trouble. So it's not a prerequisite. You need to be at least 20 people. But I think an office of 5, 6 people. If you take a Mall of Africa, if I remember correctly, I think there was about 40 architects of that specific firm working on that project. I think Wilgertman had like 35 people watching this can correct me, like 35 people working on the Sasol project. It's obviously depending on what size it is, but you need a bit of scale. One-man shows will always struggle on the bigger projects.
Just tell me, in terms of the person you deal with, is it normally the design architect or is it the project architect?
Well, obviously, firstly, mostly the design architect, up until the stage you go onto site. Aaron du Plessis, my colleague in an office, he just completed the Deloitte head office in Waterfall, which is an exceptional building. I'm sure it will win quite a lot of rewards. It was done by ITAS Luke Chandler. Luke is unbelievably gifted. And to put the concept together and design and sort out the design issues. Then he's got Karin. The moment it goes onto site, she's actually the principal agent and she runs it. So there's definitely a hand over there. He will still speak to Luke after that, but Karin is the person that you speak to then on a daily basis driving these things.
Let's then move on to, do you appoint separate project managers or do you make the architects do the principal agent job, and why?
Yeah, that's a difficult question now. The normal Atterbury normal, now I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way. If we say in our office we want to make use of project managers, our MD will say, so what the hell are you going to do? And so it's not the norm for Atterbury specific that we will use the property or project managers. So we call ourselves development managers, and we think there's a clear distinction between the two. So the normal Atterbury way would be to make use of the architect as the principal agent. But there is quite a few projects that we do make use of project managers. They do add a lot of value. I think you get exceptionally good project managers. We've just appointed a project manager now. I mean, you can't build a Mall of Africa without proper project managers. There's a big project management team on that. But we've got a small industrial building now where we've appointed project managers that you know as well. And yeah, so it depends on what the specific needs is and our own capacity at the time. And currently, you don't want to build your own big business for ourselves. We'd rather, if we've got capacity problems, rather appoint a project manager or two. But the normal Atterbury way would be to use the architect as principal agent.
And do you find that the architects are good at it? Good enough?
Some. Yeah, I'm biased, but I really do think that we've worked through a lot of architects, and I have dealt with architects that I was not happy with, but the architects that we are dealing with currently are exceptionally good at it. I think it forces the architect, if they're principal agent, to be on top of this thing. You want the architect that eats, lives, and sleeps this project. If I phone an architect on a specific project now, and as you know, with a canopy detail above Vida E, I don't think it's right. Where should it sit? And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. He knows, it should be half a meter, or is the sign above it or underneath. A guy, an architect that lives that project, he would know. And I think being principal agent just forces you. If I want to phone the architect and ask him about the programs. The moment that he's not the principal agent anymore, he loses that.
But what often happens is, if there is a project manager, if you think you know the answer to that question, he experiences it as if you are you're doing work you shouldn't be involved in, and that creates a conflict point for us. And then I think what often happens is architects get apathetic about a project because they are pushed out by the project manager. And I think from a development point of view, that's a risk you must be fully aware of. That can often happen, that an architect pulls his expertise from the project because he gets overwhelmed by the project manager. That being said,
correct,
I do think there are many architects who are just really bad at being the principal agents. And that is something we should work on. And when we look at providing a service that's a more comprehensive service that can serve developers well, we have to develop that specific part of our service so we can sell ourselves better to developers, that they won't have to appoint someone outside, an external project manager.
Again, I can't mention names, but we've had a project many years ago where we didn't have a strong architect. He wasn't the principal agent, luckily, on the job as well. But firstly, he didn't have a big enough office for the size project. It was a 250 million project at the time. I'm talking maybe 11, 12 years ago already. And we had a builder, Baron Becker is well known in the Victoria circles. He's a very good builder, but he's got his own way. And I remember many times in a meeting, he would say he's waiting for this detail. And then at some stage, Baron would just say, you know what, come and see tomorrow what I've done. Got lots of respect for Baron, but he just had to proceed because this guy just couldn't deliver. And that's frustrating. You can have an exceptionally good project manager as well. If the architect doesn't have the capacity or the capabilities, it's still going to be a nightmare. But from our side, we really prefer the principal agent be the architect. I think that's another thing. When you get the architect involved, we get the architect involved day one. I'm trying to put a scheme together now in this lockdown period where the first guy that I phone is the architect. So, okay, listen, this is what we think we should do. This is the requirements. What do you think?
No, let's go back to that. What is day one? Because by the time you find that guy, you've done the research about the actual stand or where it's located. You've compiled something already. So let's start with, where do you start, and then let's say what you call day one for the architect. Let's just quickly bridge that gap. Where do you start?
So, it's different for every project, but let's say now we've got these industrial parks in Cape Town that we're busy with. So most schemes would be tenant driven. So a broker would introduce somebody to us. So we've got this tenant, let's say Cape Fruit Coolers, and they want a new facility. Can we set up a meeting? Normally, us or the leasing team would go and see the people first. If you get enough information out of the first meeting and understand what they want, there's a big chance that I will take the architect even to the first meeting with the tenant. The issue, and that's slightly off the point now, is there's very few architects that I'm willing to take to the client.
Why?
A guy that can sell himself. My colleague Arno would always say, you get donkeys. And doesn't mean they're bad architects or they can't manage a process or so, but there's guys that can't sell themselves. I mean, if you take Bruan or Luke Chandler, you can take Luke to any client and he can sell himself. He can back, I've seen, again, I can't mention names, but I've seen him back himself against the biggest businessmen in this country. He is good enough to do that. So ideally, I'll take him there.
I'm interrupting you now. Why? What would be typical sentences that come out of his mouth? Does he dress properly? What are the nitty-gritty details of what you're referring to now?
It's like if you ask me, if you interview somebody, what must he say or not say? I don't know. You can just immediately have a feeling. I think you've got architects that want to force himself onto a client. There's a lot of people that you see. I'm talking specific industrial now. You will see a lot of clients that knows exactly what he wants. He knows exactly how let's say it's a logistics company. He knows exactly how the logistics should function within his facility. Aramex, I can use the example now. We're just starting a project now with Aramex. So they put a document together to say this is exactly what they want. A RFP, as you know, I'm not a big fan of these RFPs. So they think they know exactly what they want. So you have to respond to that. So now you need to architect, okay, you can respond exactly to that. Then you go into a second round, we have to sit around the table. Then you need an architect that has the skill to talk to them and then, I will in and tell them, you know what, I understand this is how your business functions, but you know what will be much better? If we can switch this thing around and you have your dock levers on this side and do this and this and that, without letting them feel you trying to, you will have a voorskrift.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult balance to find the right guy. I mean, I'm 100% sure we got this deal. I can't even remember how many people pitched it. Then there was a short list of 3, and I remember phoning them and saying, listen, we need to get around a table now. Because I knew that we can optimize this building a bit better because they don't know buildings as well as we do, but they know their operation as well as we do. But there's not a lot of architects that I can take to that discussion that will not piss off the client. I know a lot of architects that will do it. Then you get a lot of architects that just doesn't say anything. So he doesn't wow the client. So I think in this specific instance, Rowan from Bogertman did wow the client. He listened exactly to what they do, and they're exceptionally good to capture the brief, understand what he wants, but also bring in your own flair. Now, we've done a building for We Buy Cars now in Cape Town, which Rowan has done as well. He understands their business. I remember when we sat with them in Johannesburg early last year, my colleague actually said, why don't you put a mezzanine floor in? I'm like, no, it will never work. We've done a mezzanine floor here. We've convinced them that that's the right thing. And they're actually retrofitting some of the other buildings now to put a mezzanine floor in as well.
Oh, great.
But the architect needs to sell himself without pissing them off, without forcing it. There's a lot of architects who will force them. And then unfortunately, there's a lot of architects, donkeys, as my colleague would say, with respect, that he must just sit in the back and draw it. He will sit in a whole meeting with a client and will not make one contribution. He might have exceptional ideas, which he will convey to me afterwards. But in that meeting, he doesn't have the ability or skill to sell it in that meeting. And that's unfortunate. It's not something I think you can train somebody. Either has it or he doesn't have it.
No, I disagree. I think anyone can learn anything. So that was my next question was, have you worked with architects where they've actually become better at this part of the job? Or if you see the first time they don't work, you don't use them for it anymore?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can teach a guy. Obviously, he can upskill himself.
Yes.
But I think that it's difficult for a person. You're either a marketer or you're not. If you're a marketer, and you get exceptionally good architects that has no ability to sell himself. No, I see a lot of consultants, architects, QSs, engineers that come and see me. I can see they've got a nice portfolio, but they've got absolutely no ability to sell themselves. They would sit at my table and I do 80% of the talking, but they're trying to sell themselves. And I feel so bad for them because it doesn't mean, and especially engineers, they are the worst of this. I know they're exceptional engineers, but I need to get the information out of them. So it's difficult for somebody, if you can't sell yourself, you can't sell yourself. If you're not a marketer, so firstly you need to become an exceptionally good architect. Let's say the Luke Chandlers, the Henk Bogerkans of the world. They are exceptionally good at what they do. Derek Hinstra the same. But he can also sell himself. He can sell a concept, he can sell himself, he can sell his company. And that's a difficult thing to do for people. People think they can sell themselves, but yeah.
Well, I think a good place to start actually for young people, let's say for myself, if I would like to learn how to do it, is to do my best for those, I'm going to call them star architects, to follow them and to go and learn physically what it is they are doing in order to become architects that sell ourselves. You see, especially in COVID, I think many architects are confronted now with, oh my goodness, we don't have any work. And most of the websites look, well, the same and terrible. But we don't have the ability to sell ourselves. And I'm very glad you brought this up. I do think it's something we should teach ourselves to upskill on. Let's move on to what are the key factors that are important when you deal with architects. I know one of the example answers I have here is an architect's ability to get the figures right. You know, we don't really, when I calculate the area of a building, for me, it's something I write down on a piece of paper. How important is it to you that we get that right?
Yeah, it's exceptionally important that they understand that they must read the zoning scheme, for instance, or the approval. They must understand exactly what the parameters of this thing is. We're currently working on a scheme which we think is going to come out on an RFP. So we're not sure yet. So now normally would have very, very little time. We would have 30 days to prepare a document. And that's very little time to put something together. So now what we're doing currently is we did choose an architect for that specific job. We said to him, just hold on. Give us just a few weeks to get exactly the right information. Every site information, the zoning certificate, the traffic, all those things. But we're going to give him a pack this thick. It's so important that he reads those things and he fully understands it. What the heights is, what the setbacks are, what the FAR is going to be, what will be allowed in terms of access, what won't be allowed, the heritage, even environmental. And there's unfortunately quite a few people that's extremely lazy in doing those things. But it's extremely important. And understanding, what does a POA mean? Our Richmond project is unbelievably complicated. Our internal town planner is exceptionally good at it, but we're taking rights out of a basket for every development that we do. So I don't want to take one more square meter out of a basket that I don't need because we're paying for it. You're paying additional bulk contributions, additional roads going to be built. So you must know exactly for that specific council local authority, what can be deducted? Can I take out the passages, the lifts, the store areas? Well, when does it count as FAR, as bulk? Understand what SAPOA says, what the local authority understands, and know the council. You must understand how that council works. If you don't know the people, you must go and meet them. It's become unbelievably difficult to get plan approvals. The processes are extremely bad at the moment. If the architect's not willing to go and build that relationship and understand, and it sounds different, but it's a gat-like besigheid. You must know how to like gat to get your approvals done.
Well, I think from managing a business, one of the key things is keeping your existing clients. Where a company like yourselves, you are fantastic reoccurring clients, as long as we as architects serve you properly with all these requirements you have. Now, I think if I drop the ball once, why would you use me again? If I don't get to know council, why will you use me again? I think that's where we can become each other's competition in terms of providing a proper service to developers. Let's discuss.
Yeah, dropping the ball once is one thing. Everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes and drop the ball once or twice. But we've had architects that's done lots of work for us for many years, that we don't use anymore. And then we would have sat around the table many times and say, guys, you need to up your game on this specific item or that specific item.
What would be examples of things they would need to up their game with?
Sir, you are the key man in this project. I've said to you at day one, I don't want to build this building with a student. Then you sit around the table 3 months later and say, you are such a good architect, sir. Why have I not seen you in a meeting for 3 months? Waar is jou aandag op hierdie projek? Why do the contractor can't finish the building because you don't have the capacity to give out snag lists? There's just one person dealing on it. Is making detail mistakes. Say, we don't want this. Why do you keep on doing that? Why is the parking, which I've asked 1 million times, why is the parking still a problem? The road width was just not enough. You physically can't fit people that know some of our buildings will know we've got parking areas that's terrible, that you cannot fit a car in there. And that's an architect that made a mistake, which you've asked and want. And then, so unfortunately, then those people you won't use. But everybody makes mistakes. And then if you build up a relationship with people, that architect will phone you and say, listen, I made this stuff up. I apologize. And Anton Kukumur, I remember so well, phoning me one day from Bogertman and say, yes, we made a big mistake on something. And immediately he offered to rectify. So we just done a deal to do it. Henry Gelderblom has done the same from a structural engineering point of view. And that's how you build up mutual respect over many years, and then you proceed. Especially in this market, which is tough. In the old days, you would build 30 buildings all at once. Now you build 7 buildings. Now you look after those guys that stood with you in this time.
Well, discussing one of the names you just mentioned, I know I drove to a site meeting, to a site handover meeting with you once, and you were on the phone with this professional, and you said to me, you don't think he's given you an account for any of the work he's done on this project? And we were on our way to the site handover meeting, honestly. So let's jump to RiskWork. Give me an introduction on RiskWork. Do you sign anything? If you sign anything, what are the key points in that document?
Normally, RiskWork is such a difficult discussion to have, especially when I moved to Cape Town. Now, all of a sudden, you work with a lot of new consultants that you have no relationship with. They don't know how to work together. You have to build that relationship first. So I found that difficult having those discussions initially. The moment you do, let's say at Bogertman, we've done, 30 projects together. They know they're very happy to do RiskWork. There's a constant income stream. They've done a lot of work. There's reoccurring work. So that's a quite an easy discussion for them. So I can't say what should be the norm and how should other developers do it. But for us, that's the ideal world. We normally don't sign something. I've got no issue to sign a document if people ask for us to sign. So normally we would ask the consultants to work on risk until we push the button for the project to proceed. Then we would take them off risk. That means now you're going to detailed drawings. And the stages, you know the stages much better than I do. It's stage 4. You are now off risk. We're going to detailed drawings. Then if the project stops for some reason, then we will pay you for work done. Because then you are then you don't take the risk. But there is a big portion at the front end of a project where you do take a risk with us. And it's a big thing for us. We always said that Atterbury's got a very good strike rate. I think we were probably on 80%. Whereas the industrial buildings nowadays, you do a lot of pitches, and the strike rates are much lower. So the consultants, I think there was consultants that's done 18 proposals and then the first one kick off. But what we've learned to do in the industrial buildings, we can put a proposal together in 2 weeks. So that means you get a brochure. Normally it's got 2 renders in it, a floor plan and a value engineered feasibility. So the QS was on risk as well. The engineers gave a little bit of information, but the architects have unfortunately done the most. We will always pay for the renders because that's normally outsourced, so that's actual cost that you pay. But the skill on our side, and that's where it becomes a mutual respect thing, is to understand when are we going to waste time on or not. If there's a slight chance of a deal, we do take the risk in this market. And we have the discussion then with the architect. So listen, are you willing to work with me? And that's why I want to take him to that meeting. So he understands, are we talking to the right guy who's going to make the decision? Or is it just somebody fishing around for information? We've got a very good idea what a building should cost. I will tell somebody, listen, a 10,000 square meter building with more or less this is more or less what it's going to cost you. So that means monthly, can you afford this? If I see that, like, whoa, I say, okay, we're not going to waste time. I'm telling you that's more or less. I've got examples of 30 buildings can say you can get this building, that's what it's going to cost. This building, that's what it's going to cost. So we're trying our utmost best not to waste our own time, and it's definitely not the architect's time. I think an example that worked exceptionally well for us, we not build buildings for other people. That's not our game. We equity players and want to help assets long term. We did a first deal at Richmond Park with a company called Cape Fruit Coolers, which I've mentioned earlier. Where I sold them the land, and I knew I would see our competition at their board meeting. I would see them in the foyer. I thought I would see them when I come in. When I got out, I saw our competition. Luckily, we did the deal. We sold land there. It was our first deal. It was an important deal. It was a big 3.5 hectare piece of land. As I walked out of the meeting and touched the door, Peter de Tooy from the Tooy Apples, he's the chairman, exceptionally nice gentleman. He just said to me, will you build me a building? And I thought, I might get fired, but I said, yes, we will. So it literally took a year from that, where I said to them, guys, you have built, I don't know how many buildings on your farms. I mean, the Toy Apples, they've built exceptionally a lot of buildings on a very specific way, not the way in which we should do it. So out of numerous discussions, I said to him, you know what, give me and my team an opportunity to pitch something. Give me a brief, tell us what you want. Let us put something together. You can have your own team, and it's sort of a tender. And our consultants took that risk with me. I said to them, I feel like a prostitute. I remember driving to Ceres, and we as a team had to go and sell our services to these people. We just earned a fee, which is not our norm. But the amount of respect that we got from our consultants out of that thing was exceptional. In the last meeting I had with them, I said to them, you know what? I am happy to walk away. You can manage this project on your own. Take over my consultants. Because it was a close call for them what to do. The consultants saw that day that how loyal we are to them. We sold a piece of land. We actually did a deal with Mustec in Richmond as well, where they were supposed we should have built a building. Then they came back right at the end. Our consultants have done a lot of work, and they said, you know, they'd rather pay us more, but they want to buy the land. So we made a condition, said you buy it, but you buy it with my consultants. They said that's a deal breaker if you don't do it. And the amount of respect or loyalty we got from our consultants of that was unbelievable. We didn't make money out of it, but it secured work for them, and that made that they were willing to do more and more and more risk work. So luckily it paid off. There's now a few projects came up, but they've done a lot of work on this.
Because there are companies that are willing to do work for developers for free, it puts the rest of the teams in a very difficult position, because many people, we cannot afford, well, I can definitely not afford to serve you, to even just make you a brochure for 2 weeks for free. Yeah. Or, that there might be the odd chance that it doesn't come off. So then I think where we as architects should be is to say our practices are completely different in terms of how we conduct business. The business model you require is a service I cannot and am not willing to offer. And I think it's fine if we just admit that, because in the architectural circles, we often guilt each other into, oh, but you do work for free. But it's a completely different thing. And I think the time has come for us to admit this. Again, let's go through the details of COVID. I think there are many more architects who will be willing to do work for you on risk now. So you can just as well cash in on it, because no one has work at the moment. And to get a customer like yourselves would be great. and it's a good time for me to ask these questions as to how far you go until you actually pay the consultants. Let's say, because you use the word when you press the button on the project, what is that? When you give the go ahead.
Well, when we take them off risk, that's the time we say, okay, we are now willing to sign an appointment letter, give you agree on the cash flow. We normally say the first draw would normally be on the first draw, but then at least the guys know that this thing is going. We then know this thing is now going to cost you money. If something falls through, then it's not going to happen. It would normally be when a lease is signed or the rights are secured, or you're close enough to the rights. Let's say we know we're busy rezoning scheme, and it's different for every scheme. We're busy with the rezoning. We're just waiting for that so that we can submit plans. So I don't want to get the rezoning and then start taking off risk and then start detailed designs and lose another 2 months. I'll rather take them off risk 2 months earlier, so on that date we can proceed. And it's different in different areas. I mean, I've had many discussions in Stellenbosch. In Stellenbosch, when you do your rezoning application, you need to submit an STP. That means my architect had to do way more work, and then processes take forever here. We just want to start a project now, actually, where it took 2 years to get the rezoning done. But there's an STP submitted. That means the architects had to do a lot of work, so I had to agree with them that I will pay you for that, which we've done, which is not the norm anyway, but we've done. We had to pay them in 2 stages, because we always knew you're going to do work and it's going to lie there for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You never know how long it's going to take. So no, you have to negotiate that again and again and again.
Well, I think on a more positive note, also with regards to this type of work, is you as developers, as a whole, as a collective, are one of the main sources of income, well, actually the biggest source of income to architects. So we have to find a way to serve the developers in order to sustain ourselves. I would just definitely push for some kind of a letter to be signed at the beginning of a project.
Yeah. I think that I have a discussion with lots of architects many times, and QSs like, when are you happy? And if I were you, I also wouldn't have done work on risk. There is a very, very limited amount of people that consultants are willing to work for on risk. There's lots of big developers that consultants are not prepared to work for on risk. A lot. And I mean, that discussion was to have with them. You must go and ask these big companies that do work on risk, who are you willing to work for on risk? I would agree. There's maybe 3 or 4 developers in the country that I would work on risk for.
Yeah, you are completely right. And I think what often happens is we are confronted with many chances, people who just want the opportunity, because they know architects do work for free on risk for big developers. They take this opportunity to cash in on you for free. And I think we as architects have the obligation to filter exactly who we do risk work for. I think it's a very important point. You are.
I remember you having a discussion years ago where you did for the company you were with. You did a scheme in Petersburg for somebody. I mean, it was always a non-starter. This guy just wanted. He just wanted to get the information for free, and that's it. There's just no way she can work with these chances. I can't remember the detail of it, but it was clear that oak didn't have a tenant. I don't think there was rights in place. There's no chance you would get funding. So it was such a wet dream to call it that. Sorry, but it's just a starter. That's why you're very specific that these guys know exactly what they want. If we take Richmond and King Air, for instance, I've got a team on Richmond, I've got a team on King Air. Mostly. I always say to anybody that comes and see me, listen, if this team's got enough work, if the Bogertman, Pentad, the Villiers Consulting team's got enough work, there's 3-4 buildings going, then I will maybe introduce somebody else. I'm not letting 5 different architects doing risk work on Richmond. Then the same thing at King Air. There we've got the same team doing the same stuff all over and over. They know the rights are in place. They know that we will find the funding. They know that we won't waste their time if we think this thing is a completely non-starter. And that's the secret. I think there is developers that go out there and just find 10 different architects to do 10 different schemes. So, there's no loyalty towards it.
Let's discuss that. Do you sometimes ask architects to go into some kind of a competition for your schemes, or do you stay clear of that?
We've done it once or twice previously, but that's not our. As I said earlier, the RFPs this RFP that we've just won for Aramex, I think it's the first RFP that I've known of, and I asked brokers that a lot, and lots of other people as well. Do you know of RFP that was ever won where the front runner from day one didn't actually get it? It's actually an RFP process to me normally feels like, dis net om so 'n bietjie vergelyking te kry, just to make actually sure that you cover and all these governance things that all the companies got now. I say waste such a lot of time of architects to do that. The capability of these architects. Don't go and waste their time unnecessarily.
Just for the viewers, please explain what the RFP process, how that works. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with the process.
RFP process, most big corporates would follow this process. It's a request for proposal. So they would normally, hopefully, to do that, they go to a proper brokerage firm, the big Cushman Wakefields or Brolls of so of the world. They put a proper brief together and say, this is exactly our requirements in terms of size, in terms of heights, parking. The RFP can be 3 pages and can be 100 pages. We've done one for Amazon 2 years ago here in the Western Cape. I think we submitted 2 arch lever files like this, except for the electronic copies. And that was an extremely well thought through process, but it takes unbelievable amount of time from us, from the architects. They spend a lot of money on the resources. We spend a lot of money on the resources, where you literally give your financials in most cases to show that you have the capacity to give 100 million or 2 billion rand project, you can deliver it. For the RFP process, normally they would say, okay, here's our requirements, you've got 30 days, submit something. It's a tender. So you tender for it. But I'm not, and I always say you can ask 5 different people in Atterbury, so it's not Atterbury's view, it's my personal view. But I don't like wasting people's time on it. Rather choose somebody and then have it. What we have done previously, we were not sure on exactly what concept we had to do. I remember building a small convenience shopping center in Waterfall, next to Mall of Africa. We actually won the award that year for the best shopping center. We were not sure, should this thing be a village type or should it be a modern thing? So there we asked two architects, said, you've got 1 week, just do a concept for us. We said to both of them, we're not all trading, so okay, you do one. And we choose the one. So unfortunately, the one guy lost out. He's done lots of other work, luckily for us. His center was also very good. Luckily, we chose the other one. Luke won that competition, and Luke then eventually got the job. So I'm not saying we've never done it. In that instance, it worked quite well. But no, you wasted somebody's time there. That's not the idea.
I'm sure you get inundated with people who try to pitch themselves to you. I'm not sure. I know you get inundated. People phone me because they want to phone you. Take me through what works and what doesn't work when people pitch to you.
I wish I knew, because I think people always see developers as, I don't know, these assholes, and you just sit on a table and you say you and you, not you and you. But that's not the thing, we sit on the other side of the table as often as that. We also have to go and sell ourselves to tenants and try and convince them how good we are, that we can deliver. And we also phone our brokers the whole time. We've got especially in Cape Town, where we don't have as big a brand as we would have in Pretoria. I think there's 177 brokers on our list that myself and Mia, who's heading up our leasing team, have to deal with every single day. So trying to go and sell yourself is difficult. So I don't know the recipe, because I also can't sell myself the whole time. But I do see what I would normally do, especially when the market is now tough. People would phone me October, November, December. I said, you know what, come and see me in January, because I'm going to forget over the December holidays. So then in January, I would sit up 2 weeks and I see everybody. I don't think there's not a lot of consultants in the Western Cape that I haven't seen over the last few years. And you feel for these people, because you know They all need to keep their companies alive, and people retrenched left, right, and center. Big firms, small firms closed. It's been a bloodbath. But the one thing that doesn't work is the only way is you have to see somebody. Now I know we bat a lot of people. I mean, I tell Chantal in our office, just tell them to send a profile. I cannot spend my whole day seeing people looking for work, then unfortunately I can't get to my work. So you have to do your utmost best to come and sit around the table. Then within that firm, you need to make sure, I don't want to labor the point, that you've got a good salesman around that table. Somebody that doesn't come and sit there and be van gat. Somebody must, with enough experience, and he must try and explain exactly what the company do without nabbing for too long. I see a lot of architects that's done exceptionally beautiful houses, genuinely nice residential houses. So I think, yes, this is amazing. I've never seen this. Then you say to him, you know what, we don't do residential at Atterbury ourselves, so we've got no residential. We do warehouses and retail and commercial. And then they try and sell to you that no, but they can do it. And that, maybe I'm wrong, but you will never convince me that you can do it. I've got, you know, a friend of mine very well, that we actually sit in the same building in Stellenbosch at the moment. Celia, he's just gone on his own. He's exceptionally gifted. He's done, I've used him on my own house in Stellenbosch. Now, he's done a lot of work on houses, and he's really good. So Celia's got no warehouse experience, but what he's done is he's now formed an association with somebody that do have that. So now all of a sudden he's got the skill. I know he's a good architect. I know he can run a project, Celia. He doesn't have that skill, but he now brought that skill into his existence. But when people come and sit around the table and tell me, I can build a shopping center, I'm shit, but you can't build a shopping. I don't say you can't one day, but you need to get the experience. You can't be the lead architect for that, or the lead to industrial buildings is so sensitive. You lose a deal for 50 cents per square meter at the moment. If somebody doesn't understand dock levers and tilt-ups, and when do you do dock faces and heights, and where a truck can park, and where does a truck turn, and accesses, and especially the structure, you can learn it. Anybody can learn it. But you need to have that experience. You don't have the luxury now to teach somebody how the grid should work, all those things. So, yeah, it's difficult.
So, why don't you have in-house architects appointed?
For the same reason we don't have QSs, or we don't become contractors. Yeah, you want, it's the 80-20 beginsel. We property developers. We buy land, we find a tenant, and we build something. We try and keep it. That's it. We're not trying to take the full scope. I always say we've lost quite a lot of money in residential. We've made money previously, but in the last few years we haven't touched residential because we still sit with some unsuccessful residential developments. There, I always feel in a big portion, maybe in the Western Cape, not so much the first few years, let's say 10 years or 5 years ago, you needed to take the margin. You had to be the contractor yourself, and you had to sell it yourself. If you were able to do that, you actually made a lot of money. But trying for us to try and we have the architect in-house, there's the other developers that's done it previously, and I don't think it works. Alles is like yourself. All your shopping centers can't look exactly the same. All the offices can't look the same. That's not it. I always say, I've said it to you many times, I can't draw something, say this is going to be nice, but I think we've got a good skill to say, okay, if you draw it, say, yes, that's nice. That looks nice. I don't want to write the spec, but I can say I like this style, I don't like this style. And that's just to, unless you build, and again, I won't mention names, but there's a lot of developers for this sort of copy-paste. I don't know what the architect fees must be on that, probably 0.5% if I can imagine, because it's literally copy-paste. That's not it.
No. And I do think your company specifically, you go through a lot of trouble of not just putting down buildings on the sites. The integration with the surrounding areas is actually, something I can compliment you on. It's not like any other developers. You are cognizant of the environment.
Well, I think it's grown quite a bit with urban planning and urban planners, people specializing in urban plannings, and how do you workshop and live together, and how do you form a nice place to go to, like the Old East Precinct or the club or Linwood Bridge, Castle Gate. It become more important. People would want to go there.
From how the projects are actually managed during the planning phase and then during construction, is who chairs your meetings typically? Is it the principal agent? When do you stop chairing the meeting? How does that process work?
I always say chairing and doing the most talking is two different things, but the chairing is mostly done by the principal agent. That's it. Well, the moment we get into that phase, like for instance the RFP that I spoke to about earlier, our in-house town planning legal expert, he would chair it, because he's now getting all the information from the town planners and the heritage consultants and environmental people. Then it's okay, here's the package. From now on, we're getting to a conceptual stage. Then we would hand it over to, well, either project. If the project manager is the principal agent, then normally only once we get closer to site. But through the conceptual phase and on site, we prefer the architect principal agent running that.
And then one last thing I would like to discuss is, so according to the architectural service, it's divided into 6 stages. The first one is inception. You know, you and I have touched on where you involve the architect in terms of inception, but there's a theory that we should actually be involved far longer before that inception actually starts. When you decide on what land to buy and how the whole thing is structured. But for you as developers, I don't think there is room for an architect to do it. That's exactly what you do.
Yeah, I think the skill for us to, okay, you might, let's take the Waterfall land, for instance. Waterfall is a once in a lifetime opportunity to go and build a city and it's a gold mine between Johannesburg and Pretoria. But there, obviously, you would find the architect and discuss with him, where do you put them all? We had an urban designer, right, who's done an exceptional job. But the architect had a lot of influence in that on the bringing the concept together. Luke was very much involved on having these beautiful buildings at the entrances of it. I mean, sorry, I just touched my plant. There you would need them very, very much earlier. I mean, we're now focusing the last few years just on precincts. So now, I don't say we will get them involved when we acquire land. I think that's our skill to decide, okay, we're going to buy we haven't asked the architect before we acquired the King David golf course. Well, not to be funny, but what would an architect do in that? We have to establish what the market is. Is there a market? Can an industrial park work there? But the moment that we acquire the land, then we start putting the scheme together, and then the architect should be involved.
And then you have architects that are good at precinct planning, or do you give them the precinct and one of the key buildings, or do you give them the entire precinct to design? How do you go about with that?
Well, I think on industrial buildings specifically, it's quite difficult. How do you pay the guy to be the architect of the precinct? You pay him for the aesthetic guidelines and building the circle and the entrance gate. I mean, he's not going to, hy gaan nie retire met die geld wat hy dit uitmaak nie. Maybe covers costs out of that. So obviously the idea is you the architect, you get a fee, whatever the fee is, to scrutinize plans. But all those things are definitely not a money spinner for them. If I remember correctly, if somebody submits a building plan to the design review committee on these industrial parks, they pay about 20,000 Rand. So now the architect needs to sit and comment, and I don't even think it pays his cost on that time. But for that, you promise him you'll get at least 20% or 30% or 50% of the work we'll give to you, obviously performance-based. But that's not it. But somebody needs to be the custodian of this thing.
And then towards the end of projects, how long after the end of a project do you still include architects into your problems?
Well, up until final completion, and if there's a latent defect. Well, I had a latent defect now on a project. I didn't phone the architect, just phone the contractor to go and fix it.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. For the norm for us is clients would continue to phone you. I don't know if anything happens to their house. So it's good to know that you actually hand it over. I know I've had a long conversation with your maintenance guy, and the process they go through with the principal agent, or if it's the project manager or the architect, and each one of the consultants, in order to install the best systems. So when your maintenance teams actually take it over, they actually take it over, and it's not left in some gray area. I also think that's something that both architects and developers need to coordinate very well, that you get to a point where at final completion you actually take the building over. In our industry, it's not always the norm.
Yeah, that's why I think that, you're much more better familiar with the contracts and the stages and those things. And that's why you've got the process and getting to final completion. That means I'm done. It's not a latent defect. Don't phone me. Don't bother me. You can't expect the consultant. I've had the discussion on our side as well on let's call the asset managers, where you have handed over this project. You can't phone the architect 2 years later and say, you know what, I want to change this shop and I want to do this and I want to do this, and expect them must just do it for free. And if one small thing is going to take him an hour, he can't quickly redesign your shopping center and move 5 tenants around. You expect him, but it's still part of the project. He hasn't done fees for 2 years on this thing. So that's important. But I can imagine on residential houses, it must be a nightmare, because by die huistannies, hulle kop haak uit. I think they own the architect now and they own the builder.
I really hope I get rich enough that I never have to work on a house ever again. That is. We've revamped the house. This. I wasn't involved at all. It was my wife's project. I said, I actually can't see. This is not for me. For me, what happened when we renovated the house, my husband said, "Thank you very much for making it so easy." And I said to him, "Thank you very much for not getting involved." So
leaving the hell out. No. Yeah, I think that's the thing. When you know that on our specific house, well, firstly, budget-wise, I couldn't afford the architect, so I used my friend just for what you will know is what's at stage 2 or stage 3 to help me with the concept, and we sorted out the detail and the rest here between my wife and the rest.
I would like to elaborate on the specific case. If Gerrit, as someone who knows what architects do and the value they can add to properties, elects not to appoint an architect for his house as a full service, then we as architects obviously will have to reconsider these services we offer. If we only have one service and people believe that they don't have the budget to afford to pay for our full service, then obviously we have to reconsider what it is we do. Gerrit, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Gerrit has 3 small kids in lockdown. I'm sure many of you know what that is like. I really appreciate it. If there's ever anything we can do to make it up to you, but I think many architects will now rethink before they actually pitch themselves to you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's only a pleasure. You've got 3 smaller kids than I've got. And I'm fortunate that I've got Linda here with me in lockdown. It makes a huge difference. It's easy for me to talk about architects and what I think they should do different, or I can give comment. Whereas architects and QSs, they should tell me, and I'm always open to that. Tell us, you know what, you're a developer. You see much more developers than I do. So you can, for the same reason, you can tell us, you know what other developers do, and why don't you look at this and this and this and give us pointers. We can take it or we don't. So I wouldn't want to sit here and say, I sit on my throne. This chair actually looks like a throne, and say, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. We're always open to say, this is how other developers do it. Why don't you look at it this way?
I think that's the main goal of this interview and this series, is to start the conversation, to hear exactly it's not hearsay anymore, what comes out of the developer's mouth. Now all architects can see what came out of your mouth. And other architects can start join the conversation to say, no, but that's not how other developers do it. Or, oh yes, I'm kind of normal for doing risk work. Or yes, maybe I should sign something. Or, oh, it's not that bad that I only do a precinct or whatever. So thank you very much for giving us access to that insider's information. I appreciate it.
Only a pleasure. Good luck for lockdown.
I've compiled a set of notes that I've made after the interview with Gerrit, but I would like to take you through the key aspects of the notes. Forgive me if I'm reading some of it. I'm sure you'll know why. The first action you can actually take out of this presentation is to identify the key person in all your projects and to ensure that this person continues to be the key person throughout the project. And if he's no longer the key person, that the handover between the design architect and the project architect is a seamless transition. It really seems as if that seamless transition is something that the developer finds very attractive. If the relationship between the design architect and the project architect is a well understood relationship, this is not something that is developed quickly. So if you have people identified in your company that should do this seamlessly, make sure to invest in that. It is of value. Also invest time and money in becoming good project architects or principal agents or project managers, whatever you'd like to call it. It happens too often that we get criticized for the way we conduct ourselves on site, for not being cognizant of cost, for not managing the building contract well. And I think it's important for us as architects to include the site work as part of our service. And again, that creates the better opportunity for you to be attractive for developers. Ways you can, simple ways that you can try to be better, that you can actually do the moment you stop this presentation, is make sure you understand the JBCC contract very well. If you don't, start by reading through it. Make a list of the questions you would typically have. Take it up with someone that you know would probably know the answer. It's often a QS. If you have a QS friend, phone them up on it, have technical discussions on it, use examples from your projects so you get used to dealing with the JBCC in a practical way. Other things you can do is to make sure you understand what is written in the PROXA agreement and the client architect agreement. What are your responsibilities? Where does it end? Where does it start? How are you held responsible for the relationship between the client and other consultants? Things like that. The more confident you are about the content of these contracts, the better you are at being a project manager or a principal agent, whatever you want to call it, a project architect. Read as much as you can about how to be a good project manager. It's difficult because if you obtain books about project management, it very rarely has got to do with construction management. And that's also not what we do. So a good thing you can try to do is to shadow someone you know who is good at this. If you work alone, phone a friend, ask someone who is willing to allow you to sit in their meetings to watch what it is they are doing. Those were the 4 points. Sit in as many meetings as you can. If you work for a boss, ask him to allow you to sit in the meetings, offer to do the minutes. Doing the minutes is something that not everyone can do. The sooner you can learn how to do that, the easier it becomes for you to be a good project manager or principal agent on a project. While you compile those minutes, you action on the things you have to follow up on. And that actually puts you in a position to be a good principal agent. The second big point that I find from this presentation is that the way we communicate what our skills are is something we are lacking. It's something we can all work on. So learn how to prove your track record. Identify what is important to you about your track record. For me, it is that I am very proud of the fact that I complete projects on time and in budget. I tell that to everyone. It's because that is the one thing that makes me different from other architects. One other thing I know about myself is that I don't design. I don't like design. I'm not good at it. And that's okay. But at least I know what I'm really good at, and I sell myself like that. Learn how to effectively communicate what you're good at. Show your capacity on your website. A good idea is to have a get to know the team page. At least then a developer can, as soon as they go onto your website, know how big is your team, what are the expertise of the people in your team, what can you offer. Even if you think someone has unrelated skills, add it there. If you have someone in your office that's a good blogger, or someone that is good at graphic design, or whatever it is, add all those skills onto the website to show your capacity. Then other things you can do to learn how to sell yourself is attend online courses on how to do it. Record yourself where you try to sell yourself or pitch yourself to a development company. Watch that video again and again. See where you're making mistakes, where you're not creating the image you would want to create. Even try to do a live presentation to your partner, like your life partner, someone who knows how to give you constructive criticism that you can accommodate, where your ego doesn't really play a role in it. Watch 5 videos on how to pitch yourself, how architects typically should pitch themselves. This is something you can Google. Anyone can do it. And then make a list of the 5 emotions you want someone to experience after or during a pitch you are making. Maybe you want them to feel empowered. Maybe you want them to feel inspired. Maybe you want them to feel like at home and safe if you do house architecture. Whatever that is, write down those 5 emotions you want someone to experience after speaking to you or while speaking to you. And when you design that pitch or the way you communicate what it is your company does, make sure those 5 emotions are clear. It's the first impression you get when you open the website, when you open your Facebook page, when you open your Instagram. Make sure those emotions are clear. Then on a more practical level, this is the third group of items I've got from the presentation, is before any meeting, make sure you plan your contributions, whether it's for a pitch, whether it's for a site meeting, whatever meeting it is, prepare your contribution up front. There's nothing as bad as someone that comes into a meeting unprepared. Compile a standard risk work agreement for your company. I think most companies have this, and I think this is something we should share with each other. We should bounce off each other. Where we learn lessons, make it freely available to everyone, because I think risk work is something we don't admit that we do it. And I think that time has gone. We have to identify what service it is we are willing to offer and just stick to it. I know for me, I don't do risk work, but it means I can't work for developers. It's as easy as that. Decide up front up to what point you are willing to do risk work. I've been confronted with risk work before for my big client. I have a long-standing big client, and even if I get confronted with it, I I determine the terms of that risk work. I define the end of it. I say I'm willing to do risk work up until this point. If there's no appointment after that, I'm sorry, I can't continue to work for free. But after the conversation with Gerrit, it's clear there's no room for them to pay architects up before a certain point. So, I mean, define that for yourself and for your own company. Then go and make a list of the developers you are willing to do work for free for, or make a list of the 10 things you want to check before a new architect or a new client wants you to do work without the remuneration being agreed up front. I think it's an important thing to define for yourself to make it easier. I get confronted with many people who are looking for free architecture because of one of the online shops I have. And it's a simple process for me to filter out who would be willing to pay and who wouldn't be willing to pay, because I've defined for myself what it is I'm willing to do for free. And typically that's an email. Earlier this month, I had a client contact me over the internet. I've never met him. The work's completed. Whatever he wanted done, I didn't do it myself. I outsourced the work. The architect was paid for it. It was a fantastic deal. But he was filtered through the same process as everyone that contacts me blindly from the internet. And he passed. The other person who contacted us on the same day did not pass. And I'm not willing to waste my time on that. There are 3 topics I would like to open the conversation with. I know these could be controversial. I would really love your feedback on it. I encourage any interaction. Please send me emails to anneke@strict.co.za. These conversations, I think it's to the benefit of all architects to open this up. The days of having all our cards against our chest is over. It's just not the way business can be conducted anymore. I propose that we develop, as we have the standard architecture agreement, stage 1 to 6, that we develop a standard service for developers. This should, in the conversation with Gerrit, he said the town planner leads the meetings up to a certain point, and then it's taken over by the architect. That means there's a period of time, whatever that period of time is, that is not defined by our standard agreement. We would like to put that into inception and then blur it over into design development. But the fact is that is still scope definition. That is stage 0. And we have to calculate that into the hours we spend in order to bill for it effectively. So even though you're willing to do work up to stage 4.1 with the possibility of only being paid later, I think it would be to everyone's benefit to have this standard service. And I think there are many architects out there who would actually be able to put this process into a concise list quite easily. So I'm putting it out there. Maybe we should develop a standard architectural service for developers. That would also enable new developers to play according to the rules. And that would create rules where they can actually play in. Because at the moment, they're not playing in the rules and they're getting away with it because there are no rules. That's my 10 cents worth. The second point I'd like to raise is it happens too often that developers, I want to call them that, require architects to do the developers' work. So when Gerrit and I discussed the King Air project, and I asked, so when do you involve the architect? He says, but what job would the architect have? It's my job to investigate if there will be a market, if this thing can work. And it's happened too often that a client approaches an architect first, and now all the research becomes part of our scope of work. I truly believe we should address that. And to protect ourselves, stop doing it for free. Bully the developers to do their own homework and to come to us with a proper brief so we can start doing our job. If, however, you are good at that, sell yourself like that. There are many architects that know exactly what to do in that phase of a project. I coincidentally have no idea what to do. So it's important for me to admit that I don't know how to do that, and not to sell myself like someone that can do it. I mean, I've done work in that phase of a project, but I can't really advise a client on that, and that is okay. So stop doing developers' job, especially if we're not getting paid for it. And one other thing I have a lot of experience with is the client's inability to take over a project. I've spent many hours trying to teach clients how to take over projects and where their responsibilities start. I think I've failed gloriously. That's the short answer. But I do think, as a collective, as all architects, we should stand together and stop clients from insisting on a service that we don't offer. But I do think all of this comes down to I don't want to offend anyone, our inability to communicate what it is we do. And I've been preaching this for a long time. I think it's irresponsible of all of us to say we offer the same service for the same fee. It's impossible. It can't be. You must be good at something. Some companies are good at everything. That's the truth. And they should sell themselves like that. But as we all know, I think more than half of the architects in South Africa are one-man shows or very small companies. We can't be good at everything. That recommendation of creating the word he used was, I think, alliance, or to team up with a team that can help you develop your skills. That's important, but we can only start doing that once we understand what we are good at, what each other are good at. I know because I freely tell people that I'm good at contract management and I'm a good project architect, I've been appointed by other architects in town to help them to get out of a bit of a situation that they were in. People appoint me just to come and try to fix situations that haven't really gone bad yet, but to try to resolve the situation. And that really works very well. But it's important for everyone to tell your colleagues what it is you're good at. Use your website to do that. Develop your Instagram account to do that. Make sure the 5 emotions you want someone to experience when they go to your site, the 5 emotions you want a developer to experience when they go to your site, are clear. Being in lockdown, well, lockdown is kind of over now at the moment, but we don't know where this is going, so it's irrelevant. I think we can just as well get used to being more digitally orientated. And I think it's a good time for all of us to invest in the way we communicate who we are and what we are. And the medium at the moment is digital. Go and investigate what your image looks like and work on it. I think it's as simple as that. I hope you've learned a lot from Gerrit today. I truly believe that I've learned from him, or from the conversation. I'm sure we'll continue to have this conversation for a long time. Please follow us on Instagram at I Thought I Knew Architecture. Our community is growing quite fast, and I would love to hear from you. You're welcome to contact me at any time. Please send an email to anneke@schlick.co.za. Thank you.